Well, hey guys, welcome back to Stronger Marriage. We are thrilled today to have Sara Cabra here with us, and really thankful that you take time to come. And you're a busy lady, right? But we're excited to have you here. And I know there are a bunch of people, as the church grows, may not know who you are around here since, we've been here for so long. You're a legend in the eyes of people who have been here for like 10 or more years. But again, as the church grows, there may be people who don't know you. So I would love if you just kind of tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your family, job, what you do, what you love, what you hate, all that good stuff.
Sure. Sounds good. Hey, everyone. I'm Sara. It's nice to meet those that I haven't met before. And it's always great to get time with you guys. So thank you for the invite. Background on me. So I come from the North. My family is from Massachusetts, both sides, my mom and my dad. Most of my life, I grew up in upstate New York. We moved here when I was in high school. We moved to Chapin, so I'm a proud Chapin Eagle. And then after I graduated, from Chapin, I went to University of South Carolina.
Okay.
I have a degree in psychology, which
I did not know that.
There is
Do you
news
really?
to tell.
Okay.
I do.
That really makes sense.
No, it makes sense, but
yes.
I didn't know that. I thought you had a business degree.
I have an MBA that I got 20 years after
you
I
have a
went
business
to.
degree.
I
Interesting.
do.
Okay.
And so here's the first story deviation of the day.
All right.
I was a psych major because during college, I actually started as an economics major, and I loved it. I thought it was really cool. I like math. I'm a nerd. That's what you do when you're a nerd. You go for economics.
Right.
And halfway through my junior year of college, I had the opportunity to go intern in Washington, D.C. So it was through the University of South Carolina. I moved up there, which is how I have any connection to the D.C. area, and I was able to intern for the House of Representatives. And it was awesome. I loved it. It was such a cool experience, and I mean, there's nothing like being the low man on the totem pole in a congressional office. Like, you are making the copies, you are
Buying the coffee.
You're buying the coffee. Like it
But
was awesome.
in the room.
But you are
room.
in the room, and I was just so amazed with how thoughtful people were, and it really created this understanding of stewardship to me. I think that's like when I really started to kind of get consumed with the concept of stewardship, because when you're working in a congressional office, it's not about politics. It's about how well you take care of your congressional district and how well you serve people. And I love that, because that is what government is.
Yeah.
It's governance of people. And so I had the opportunity to do that. So I lived in D.C. for about 9 months as part of that program, had a phenomenal experience in the office where I worked. And when I was getting ready to leave, they said, this was really a good experience for us. If you want, we'll hold a job open until you get done with college. And so I was like, I'm ready today.
Wow.
But I also wanted to get my degree. And I mean, at the time you're a junior in college, you're ready to keep going. So on all of my spring breaks, I would like take the train up to DC and volunteer in the office and go back during summer break just to keep the relationship alive. And they did. They held the spot open for me until I got there. And small office at the time, there were only 6 people that were part of that congressional office. And so that's how post-college life happened. I moved up to DC, was broke as a joke. My starting salary was $23,000.
Wow.
And that was, I don't know, 25 years ago working
Living
on Capitol
in
Hill.
D.C. though.
Yeah, I was broke. And to make some extra money, I started working for a large retail electronics company.
Okay. All right.
And did both of those things for 3.5, 4 years. And then needed to fish or cut bait, because it was 9 to 5 at the office, Monday through Friday, then Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, going and working at the store on the weekends. And when I made that decision, it was one of the first times I really had to make a grown-up decision about, here's 2 very different career paths. There's no clear answer which one is right or wrong. And even people that I trust that would advise me gave me different advice of where to go and what to stay. So
that's tough.
that was a lot. I think I probably really prayed through that for years. and never came up with an answer. And so sooner or later, you have to make a decision if there's no clarity in that. And it's been a great experience. So as a result of that, I lived in DC for about 10 years, had the opportunity to work remote, traveled significantly for about 5 or 6 of those years. I was traveling 2 to 3 weeks a month, primarily across the United States, which was really cool and really exciting. And certainly a period of time where the advantage was for anybody on the team that was single. There were 5 of us, 3 of us did the job, and 2 had to quit because they just couldn't be away from home 2 to 3 weeks a month. So, so that was a good life season of singleness. Then I had the opportunity to move back here and work remotely, and I have lived here and worked remotely for about 10 or 12 years. Had the opportunity to move to China, live there for a while for work.
I was about to say, how long were you there?
I was there for about a year.
Okay.
And again, I think half the team, there were 10 of us, half the team was single, half was married, and it was a very different and probably better experience for the single part of the team.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah.
But didn't you learn Mandarin over there?
I learned like enough to freak people out.
Really?
But it was probably 5 or 6 words. Taxi directions so I could get home, and then like some PowerPoint instructions like move the slide back in Mandarin just so that people would freak out. So nothing significant. I'm not smart enough for Mandarin for sure. So but yeah, and so ever since then I've been back here. This has been my home church since I was 16 years old. So when we moved here, we had looked around for a couple of churches, and we immediately felt connected to this one. So this church is more home to me than South Carolina or really anything. Like this is home. So that's how I'm connected here.
Okay, so you didn't mention this, but there was a pocket of years that you also served here alongside of the School of Ministry with young adults. Correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I love students in college age, and I feel like that's always been a good connection point. And loved every opportunity to work with the students.
Sara spoke at our son's graduation event here at the church, and it was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
It was amazing.
It reminded me of those days when you were teaching the students.
So
it
was very inspiring.
That's what I wanted to be as a kid, was a teacher.
Did you?
And I still do that. I just do it for a corporation.
Right. Yeah.
But I love the idea of teaching, and I like to learn. So again, nerd. I announced that early. But I think it's a fun job, and it's really rewarding.
Yeah. That's amazing.
You're good at it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, we want to talk today, obviously, as it relates around the idea and the experience of being successfully single. Okay. And when I taught a few weeks ago on this, I'll be honest with you, it is anytime I teach on singleness, it is in the top 3 most difficult sermons I teach, even from a biblical perspective. Sure. It's just difficult. And part of the reason for that is that when you are single, you go through very different experiences. It can be a great season. It can be a hard season. It can be everything in between, just depending on where you are. And it's very stressful because you want to see people where they are, and you want to make sure that you love on them and shepherd them well. But you also want to exhort and to edify and to build up and to encourage to move into the future and to enjoy what they have. So in the sermon, I used Jesus's teaching on singleness, which basically I broke it down into 3 concepts. I believe that Christ was talking to people who God chose. He had called them, is the language I used. God had called them to be single, like the Apostle Paul. He was never going to marry. It was a calling. But then there are some people that choose to be single, and these are people that they as an act of worship, they want to give Christ their entire lives without intimate relationship. And then people who are single by consequence, and again, that's not a negative. What I meant by that was just sometimes that's just how life happens.
Sure.
Maybe you're 42 years old and your spouse dies, and now as a consequence of life you're single, or maybe you just never got married. Whatever the case is. Yeah. So I was curious from your perspective, because I respect you so much. I think that you have lived out a successfully single life as good as anybody I have ever seen in my life. And I mean that. And so anytime I'm like teaching, there is something in the back of my mind as I prepare thinking, how does Sara feel about this?
You should not do that.
I know. And probably not. But I'm curious, like even going off the sermon, did you have any thoughts as it relates either way, whether you're like, yeah, this is great, or this, I kind of feel different about this? I'm curious.
Sure. Let's go on a journey.
All right.
I have thoughts. First, the marriage sermon has been so good for me, and not thinking, not like, hey, I want to be married 6 months from now. Like it's not creating pressure around marriage. It's just been so good from a relational standpoint and understanding and respecting other people's marriages. And I think creating real normalcy and expectation in marriage. So it's just been really phenomenal.
Yeah.
Whether or not someone is married or single, like it's just been really good.
I appreciate that. And I'll say this right before you keep going. When I taught on singleness, I had one of your very good friends, as a matter of fact, reach out to me like separately and say, that sermon on singleness meant so much to me.
Oh, wow.
And this person's married. And I'm not sure what the Lord, but again, that's just the eternal work of the Spirit of God, kind of thing. So I thought it was cool that I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably echoed in a lot of places. So very cool. Good for all of us.
Yeah.
I have tons of thoughts. So ask questions as we go through too. So even thinking about like those stages of either you have been single, you are single, you will be single. That's a great concept, because that's true. Like if you're married, you weren't always.
Right.
So and some of you weren't married 15 minutes ago and are married now, right? So like singleness is not far at the front or at the back of that. But then also like we can come back to that. But the calling piece of, are you called to be single? Is it circumstantial? I think there might be a door number 5 or whatever, door number 4, which is you don't know which of those circumstances are there.
That's good.
Right?
Good.
So like I can speak about myself because that's where I can be honest about that. I can't speak for everybody else, but I don't know if it's something that hasn't happened or if this is a calling, but I have to be okay with it either way.
Okay.
Because I think the desperation stage publicly is a bad look for everybody, right? Like there are just ways that it doesn't resonate, and it's not healthy for you. Like if there's just levels of how to walk through singleness, and I think there's a lot of internalizing things that need to happen before things are externalized. But I also think if the Lord has called me to singleness and I don't know it, I'm not resentful of it. If he's not called me to singleness, he has not provided either me or the other person with the opportunity yet. Right. So I don't want to be resentful of timing. And then I also think there are some things about being single when you're older that prove out time and time and time again the faithfulness of the Lord in every circumstance where you're single. Before even any of these sermons were announced, this was probably, 6 months ago, I remembered one day just thinking, Lord, thank you that I'm single. I could not do this if I were married. I know myself well enough to know, because of the demands of life, I would not be successfully married right now. That's about me. Yeah. That's not about someone else. Like I'm at my limit, right? And I was so thankful just to be single. But what that also means to me is I've needed to be single until this point to do what I need to do. And it wouldn't have been right for me to be married 15 or 20 years ago if the right thing for me now was singleness. Wow. And so I don't know what that timing looks like, but I also have seen the Lord be so faithful in every season that I don't have reason to believe that he's tricking me or leading me down a path or creating confusion in all of this. There's got to be a balance of like living in the moment and then living for moments later as well.
Yeah. And I think there's so much maturity in that.
Oh, thank you.
And I think you're right, though. When you are younger, there are, and again, even when I'm preparing sermons, I think it can be easy for a single person to look at Cory and Joy and say, you got married when you were teenagers. Right. And they're right. But just because somebody hasn't lived your experience doesn't mean they don't have something to say. Right. And I think that there are those, especially when you're in your mid-20s for some reason, there can be this sense of desperation that comes up. And I'm not even saying that it's a lack of maturity. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that I think it's good to lean into maturity during those moments of desperation instead of like, Father, this is what I want. Father, what are you trying to do? Yeah. Does that make sense? Yep. And so I think that, again, everybody is so many people are at different places in their journey of singleness. Yeah. It's just hard to put a pin on it.
Time matters, right? I think in my 20s, watching where other people were in their 20s, there is speed to marriage, right? And that's what's happening when you're in your 20s, your early, mid, maybe even late 20s. I'll come back to geography in a second. But people are getting married. And so all of a sudden your circle is changing. The pressure's on. Yeah. And even if there's no pressure at that point, the awareness is there. And maybe for the first time in people, it's like, ooh, everybody else is doing this. What's up? Yeah. And then when you get into your 30s, it's not that people are married, they're having kids. And so that starts being another layer of, this seems like the right natural timing for all of these things. Am I missing the boat on this? Like for me, that's when I think it'd be easy to think like, what's wrong? Because now we're kind of 2 steps into this. And then when you get to your 40s, your people that are in your circle have kids that are old enough to start having kids in some cases. And you're like, oh my goodness. And so they're on their second marriage or the grandparents, right? And so there's like all of these life journeys. And I think that's part of it is like healthy deconstruction. Like, this is not going to look how it looks, how I would have defined it when I was 15 or 19 or 25, and being content with that. And actually, I think even being beyond content, like there's a level of being content and trusting the Lord. And then there's also a level of, and I can still do things and have fun and like have a life. Love life. This is really good. Yeah. And this will look different for me. So I know at this point in my 40s, if the Lord blesses me with a marriage, it is not going to look like how it would have looked in its 20s, and I don't want it to. Yeah. That's not the life I want to grow up with someone when we're in our 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's a very different journey. Yeah. I think that's part of the struggle, is because the encouragement needs to be so different at different stages, because it's easy to say in your teens, like, hold on, she's there, you'll find her, right? Like whatever that looks like. But that starts feeling and looking very different in those different stages. Yeah.
Okay, so I would love to know in those different seasons. I love the overall view, and I trust and I believe that you are content in what the Lord. I love that you're able to look back, but I'm sure along the way there were moments the enemy crept in, or just your naturalness just crept in, and like those thoughts. So what are some practical things, or do you have like a, some people have like a mantra or something that you tell yourself to just pull yourself and snap yourself out of that? Were there moments like that, or times that you had to fight that to stay content and to stay like, Lord, I am in your will, and it is going to be better than I could ever imagine, but right now this really stinks?
I think I've had maybe a little bit of an unfair advantage in ways with this, because I'm not wired for lonely. I can genuinely say I don't think I've ever felt lonely ever in my life. And so I think whether that's just the Lord giving me a gift and allowing me to do some pretty cool things that would have been crippling to me if I struggled with loneliness, that's not a struggle for me. But I think it's not about like, where is he? Where is he in this story? What's the plan? I think the easier thing is to make it about me. Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, what am I doing wrong in all of this? Yeah. And again, I think that's where sometimes as a friend, it can certainly be an enemy. And there's a balance between like, nothing, you're fine, right? Like, there are things I need to work on. I know that. And so you don't want to overinflate it, but also like, check the boxes. Am I praying about this? Am I praying for him, whoever he is? Yeah. Am I asking the Lord for wisdom in this? Am I expanding my circles? Am I engaging in the things that I need to do? Yeah. And this goes back to like the ideal versus the idol. Am I making marriage a solution? Yeah. And I mean, just really honestly, I even think there are times, and this is again kind of part of that, like, I'm just glad I'm single right now. I was thinking the other day, I'm like, as I was thinking about what are we going to talk about in the podcast, I'm like, if Cory asks, what do you think the best parts of marriage are? And my answers are having someone to take out the trash and someone can pick me up if the car breaks down. Everything was so functional. I'm like, surely it must be deeper than this. Right. So I'm kind of like, okay. And I also think that's part of it, because all of the scriptural and spiritual elements have to be there, but so does love. Yeah. You have to be in love with that person. Yes. That has to be so foundational. And I haven't been in love with someone like that, where I have felt like this is literally the other part of me. Yeah. And I think that I have to be careful of that, because you have to be open to feeling that, right? Yeah. But then also I think you have to know, if this isn't, like, if you can live without him, maybe you should.
Right.
So that's the contentment, though.
Yeah. Yes,
because
absolutely.
As we all do, we love to live in extremes. Yeah. Lewis said we are just masters at living in the extremes, and we all do that, whether you're married, single, whatever. But sometimes, living in that middle of contentment, where it's like, I don't want to grow complacent,
right,
and just be like, whatever. But I also don't want to grow just miserable. Right. Because this hope that I had hasn't come to fulfillment. And so there's got to be this middle, element of contentment, where my contentment is not found in the ideal. Yeah. It's not become an idol in that. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the different seasons and how a single person watches their friends go through that. And you said your circles begin to change. And that doesn't mean their lives begin to change. It means like your relationship begins to change. Like our friendship's not as close because you've got a 3-year-old. Right. And that is a very natural, that's a very real thing. I have heard at times people who are single and they've gone through that. I've heard it said that, somebody finds out they're pregnant. I'm so happy for them, but this is so painful for me. I would never say it to that person, because I'm so happy for them and I love them, but this is so painful for me. Have you ever had that feeling or known anybody, or like, do you have any thoughts about what that is like?
Maybe not as much for the kids part as the initial marriage piece, because that's really when the separation starts happening from a friend circle. And I think this is something, if I were thinking about what makes singleness difficult, I think on some levels, geography. We'll come back to geography. And in other ways, church. And not in a bad way, but when someone gets married, there are now more opportunities to just stay with singles. So I'll give you an example. I think about even that progression in small groups, right? So you're single. There's a couple of things you can do as you're single, and those are really good and really healthy, and they keep you around other single people. When you're married, there are life groups that are dedicated just for marriage, and then there's also dedicated life groups to men, women, whatever that looks like. And what's interesting, I think specifically in the church world, because there does need to be specific ministry for married couples and men and women, that becomes the view. We go to the married stuff or we do the things by ourselves, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Right. But the singles now don't go to the married groups. Right. Doesn't help me to hang out with a bunch of women if I want to date men. I mean, so like I need men to introduce me to other men, right? So like I've got this group here that can't help me and this group here that I'm not part of naturally. Yeah. And there just becomes time demands with that, right? And so finding a way to create a balance of still staying connected to married friends who now have other categories of relationships to prioritize, that can be tricky. And I don't think it's isolating, but it puts a premium on time of when you're making the connections with married couples. And how that, so I think that's a place where all of a sudden you're like, oh, bye.
Right.
See you in 18 years when you're, you don't have kids yet, but I'll see you when they graduate from high school. Right. But I also think that's where if you have 3 friends, you're going to struggle with that. If you're the person who is the only person who's single, you got to make some more friends. You do have to go make more friends. Yeah. And I also think this is the geography piece. I love living in the South. Let me say that. I love it. I hope to live in the South forever.
Same.
The South is much more family and relationship oriented than most other parts of the world. And I have had enough experience to be able to say pretty confidently, I know what I'm talking about with that. And so there's social pressure and to have kids pretty young, and that's okay. And I think there's also like the right kind of spiritual atmosphere of getting married and having kids.
Sure.
And so if you are in the South and if you were in a Southern church, there's much more predominance of people getting married young. And so those kind of spaces in your life just start looking a little different. When I was living in DC, when I lived in China, I mean, singleness is probably more prevalent than married.
Yeah.
So there are just different places. And I'm glad I've had experiences with that, because it reminds me that this is not the only standard. It's a good standard. And I need to continue to foster relationships outside of my immediate circle, because I don't know who's in the other circles, right?
Sure.
But I think that would be hard to do if you hadn't had that experience, if you had kind of been homegrown here, which is amazing, but it also might be limiting in terms of your ability to get out and meet other people.
Or even your perspective of, I'm the only one or whatever.
Right.
And you're like, no, there's really a whole world out there, who's going through similar
and successful,
stuff.
right? Like they're having good careers, they're doing things. And I think if you can't create that perspective, it feels more like you're failing. You're the one left out. Yeah. And it's because the perspective is too close to a circumstance.
And I can understand that. I mean, I can really understand that mindset. You mentioned something about, life groups within a church or whatever. And one of the things I'm been wanting to ask is, from a pastoral standpoint, our heart, we want to shepherd people. We want to love people, and we want to make sure that everybody fulfills the purposes of God in their life, whatever that looks like for them. And so I'm curious from your perspective, the question is, what do you think the church in general, I'm not necessarily talking about Christian life, but maybe, but what could the church in general, or even parents or friends, what could we do better to help people live successfully single? And the reason I ask is because when we're talking about singles, there is a very wide spectrum. You've got young people who are, in their 20s and they're just wanting to get married. We have people in our church that are in their 40s and they're widowed. And then we have people in their 70s who have never been married and they're longing for a spouse. And so we have the whole gamut here. And so it's difficult because, the same thing doesn't always apply depending on what season of life you're in or situation. But I'm curious, generally speaking, if you have any thoughts about what could the church do better in general to kind of support?
That's a tough question. I don't know. I think one of the challenges in a large church is just size, right? I mean, on Sunday mornings, unless you randomly sit next to a stranger, you're probably not going to meet anybody new.
Right, because you're there for an hour and a half,
right.
But it's not like social time.
Right, exactly. And I think that's difficult. So there are some environments where some of those natural experiences happen, like Sunday night church, Wednesday night church. I also think it is so natural to think of things like small groups catering to a type of person, but they can also cater to like the book of Hebrews,
right?
Acts,
right?
And the topic can be what pulls people together rather than the people being what pulls people together. So I also think finding connection points, and I even think I have the incredible blessing of being generations of Christians in the same family, which the older I get, the more precious that is to me to like watch other generations and family. But I think about when I was growing up and how we like really would fellowship with other families. You go out to lunch with another family, you'd get together after church on Sunday night with another family. And I think we may have lost the art of fellowship to some degree because there are so many events that pull people together. Yeah. And then it's hard to find another, like, well, let's go out after the event and just like build relationship. Right. Yeah. And I think we may have lost some of that art, even in a generation who doesn't have the opportunity maybe to create that experience or hasn't been raised in that experience. So there's something about unscheduled,
unpressured, unorganized. Let's just be together.
Let's just hang out. We almost have to schedule it because everybody's so busy. I'm single and I'm busy, right? Like there are things, there's calendars. But I also think it takes the pressure off of like, go hang out with some friends after crew. Just go to Sonic and sit there with a group of people. Invite someone you don't know.
So like, let's take it from the church as an organization down to just Christians.
Sure.
If you've got people in your life who are single, what would you say to them to continue to do or to start doing to support, or even parents of people who are single?
I don't feel like anyone has ever defined me because I'm single. And I think that's having good parents and having good family and a good church. I don't feel like when people see me, they think, oh, there's Sara, she's single. But I think because I don't think of me as being single. I think of wanting to go be friends and wanting to be part of something. And this is a circumstance, not a label.
Yeah.
And I think you have to start with that first, or it becomes about assuming that everybody else is labeling you, or being angry when someone says, and there's Sara, she's single. Like that can't be what gets under my skin. So I think don't lose touch with your married friends. Make time to spend time with your married friends because you're going to learn either how to or how not to from them anyway.
Yes.
And then have the courage to, if you need an additional circle, go hang out with another circle somewhere. There's other young adults programs. It doesn't mean you have to leave the church, but you can go do that. And I think for parents who are trying to help their kids with it, like put some perspective on it. Being single is not the worst thing in the world.
That's right.
There are so many things that are easier and so many things that can be better. So helping them figure out how to have direction and spend their time wisely, make the rest of their life much more important than their position on being single.
That's good.
Like it's a circumstance.
And I think that's what Paul was getting at. I really do. We've got to remember Paul's writing the eternal word of God, but he's also a dude.
Yeah.
He's a person who loves his people.
Yeah.
And he's trying to help his people. And he makes the statement, he's like, man, if I had it my way, all of you would be like I am. All of you would stay single. And he's viewing it through the perspective of, look at all the things I get to do. Look what I get to do that a married man can't do. And I think because, again, and we are obviously advocates for marriage.
Right.
We believe in the beauty and the institution of marriage. I think that sometimes even in the church, I think I've done this, that we have made marriage the end all be all.
Yeah.
And as much as we want to advocate for that, my perspective on the church side, we've also got to understand that there is a whole world of people who are not going to experience that. And we need to help them with perspective to see there is so much life to live.
I think that still comes back to contentment, right? And although Paul wasn't talking about it in terms of married or singleness, it still fits. You need to be content when you're single, and you need to be content when you're married. Yeah. And to your point about like idolizing marriage, the people by and large that I have known, whether it is in church or out of church, that have made marriage the be-all, end-all have not been successful in marriage because it doesn't satisfy all of the brokenness or all of the things that you think marriage solves for you. It doesn't. And so getting to marriage in a state where this is everything, like this is it. Yeah. I think it leaves people feeling really lonely and really empty. And then I think you start looking outside of marriage to find the thing that's been what you think is going to satisfy whatever it is you're looking 100%.
For. 100%. So as we talk to people and friends who I've got who are single, the joking and the jesting will come up. You guys were married as babies, you know, and so you feel almost like you can't speak to things sometimes. And there are things that I can't honestly speak to. But the truth is, and if there's ears to hear, is when I'm telling these people who long to not be single anymore, is that no, marriage is not the be all end all, but you also don't know all the struggles that are inside of marriage.
That's right.
Like, and I know you're saying what the words are is, but I want to be married. So I want to deal with the struggles, and I want to be like, but you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And like, it doesn't mean just because you say I do that like the whole world is rainbows in front of you. There are real struggles inside of marriage that you have to contend for. And so I think at some sometimes a skewed perspective that marriage is going to solve so many problems, but also that like singleness is more of an issue than inside of marriage. I think there's issues all over the gamut. Yeah. So
it's the Jerry Maguire. You remember in our generation, it was the you complete me type thing.
Yep.
And I think that mentality has carried through.
Yeah.
And it's just this idea, I am incomplete without a person to complete me.
Mm-hmm.
And that mentality is idolatry in and of itself. It's saying that anything, whether if I can't have that job, I'll be incomplete. If I don't have that diploma, I'll be incomplete. If I don't have that person, I'll be incomplete. When Christ is saying, no, if you don't have me, you'll be incomplete. Yeah. And I think there is a beauty in the quest for contentment.
Yes.
But I think it's so important that everybody is searching for contentment.
Yeah.
Because you're right, it doesn't fix it.
Right.
I made the joke when I talked about being successfully single a few weeks ago. I made the joke that the ratio of sermons we're giving to married people is 6-1.
Yeah.
And that's not because we love marriage more.
Right.
It's because married people have more problems than single people. And I'm serious about that, you know?
Yeah.
One of the things that is, I hope not preventative for me, but it's certainly a caution to me in thinking about getting married and a husband is, and I've only seen this in women, and it probably exists in men, but I just haven't had those conversations. When women are talking about like needing to be married and wanting that and like really like a heart cry, and I'm not diminishing that at all. That's powerful and it's painful. It's obviously painful. Yeah. What I have never heard them talk about is their husband and that. I've only heard the hurt of not being married. And this is what they need. And I wonder if it's easy not to talk about the husband in that, or if it really is just, I feel so definitionally like I need to be married that I am not complete.
Wow.
Not just about the guy, but like the title is what completes me. Yeah. And I think that that's so dangerous because that's not the marriage. And if that ache is there, let it be for a person and like the relationship, not the circumstance, because the circumstance will fail sooner or later.
I have never heard that perspective. And I think it's so true because in the heart of every single person should be, I wonder what she looks like.
Yep.
I wonder where she works. I wonder how many kids she wants to have. There should be that element of selflessness, but that is almost never a conversation. And I haven't even really ever thought it that thoroughly until you said that. Yeah. The only time I ever think that way is when I'm praying for my children's spouses. Sure. I think that way. And I wonder, what are their parents like? How are their parents raising? But when we're talking about single adults, I've never heard that conversation. Yeah. That is incredible perspective. That's an
interesting take. It's kind of like when you're talking about someone who is getting married and they focus on the wedding, on the wedding, on the wedding. They're not focused on the covenant. Yeah. You're taking it back a step and going in your singleness. What is the focus right here?
Yep.
So I love that.
Yeah.
That covenant should strike the fear of God into people's covenant with God.
Right. We should walk into it
really should be about the other person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. But it's so interesting, you know, the way culture has influenced the church.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, out of all the weddings I've ever done, I am so intentional about using the right language. Yeah. That you are standing not before your friends and family alone and not before your spouse alone. You're standing before the living God. And this needs to be a sobering moment for you, you know. But man, what a cool perspective, you know. And again, that needs to be a conversation.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So I think that's great.
Okay, so let's talk a little more practical. I have watched you step into those spaces where your friends have gotten married and you just made the decision, or it looks like you've made the decision, I'm just going to step into their life. I'm going to, as they have children, I'm going to become the aunt. I am going to be in their world. I'm going to be in their life. And I know that some of those people, you walked in singleness with them. Then they got married. So I would love to know some things of how you decided, I'm just going to stay in this relationship. And then if you didn't know the spouse, like, how did you make that work? Like, I love this person and now I'm going to love you. And so like different things like that. How did that work for you?
Great question. I think part of it is the decision, right? When you have friends that operate like family, I mean, Pastor Cory, you just said it, like you pray for your kids and their spouses. I think we should pray for our friends and their
That's so
spouses,
good, man. That is
right?
so
At
good.
whatever season they're in,
Yeah.
because the spouse probably determines your relationship with that
Yeah,
person
it's
after
gonna
they get
influence
married.
your life. It's gonna affect
Absolutely.
you. Yeah.
And so I think like you can love and care for someone before you know them. And I think it was the hand of God and some wisdom that was like, these people are, if you want them in your life forever, then you have to love their families well. And thankfully that's never been a challenge. Like I have loved my friends' spouses simply because they married friends.
Yeah.
And so I think some of that's a choice. And I think some of that is wanting to stay relevant. Like you don't want to let those relationships go, especially when it's close friends that are like family. Like that just you have to assimilate there. I think what's interesting about it, and I do think about this, and I'm cautious, I hope, about this, especially when it is your male friends marrying another female. I don't ever want to make someone uncomfortable about my relationship with their husband. And that is so far beyond friendship. That is at work. It is at the grocery store. I don't ever want to cause jealousy or to cause suspicion, because for a million reasons, it's just horrible.
Yeah.
So I think you also have to strike the right balance with creating the relationship with the other person and honoring their distance. And so I can't think of an example of when a friend has gotten married where I haven't kind of withdrawn a little bit, at least in the beginning, for them to establish their relationship. I don't want to be a dominant force in how a husband and a wife operate with their social circle. I'm like, that is authority that they need to operate in. And if I can be there and support, I want that. But I don't ever want to be a threat, even if it's a conversational preference. I'm not worried about it becoming something more than that.
Right,
but
right.
I don't want to be the first person you want to talk to that day. I want that to be your wife.
Yeah, that's good.
You know?
And that's wisdom, and that's love.
Yeah.
I think sometimes there can be a danger when a person from the outside is going to become a spouse, and they're kind of being this, hesitation, or like, who's this guy hanging out with, whatever. But I think you're so wise in saying, no, there has to be an establishment of relationship, not just with my friend that's been my friend for 10 years, but with the person they've chosen, because they are going to be a part of my life moving forward. But if I'm being honest, the easier thing is just to step away.
Yeah.
The easier thing, I mean, I think that's what I've seen more than not.
Yeah.
I've seen people who were still in singleness just say, well, they're married and they've got their own world. It's just easier if I let them go and I do my own thing. We'll be acquaintances at best.
Yeah.
But I think what I hear you say is, no, there needs to be a fight.
Yeah.
Like there needs to be a contention for the relationship.
Yeah. And I think a level of understanding. I mean, I go through seasons where I am not socially available at all, and it has nothing to do with the spouse.
Yeah.
I'm just busy. Work is busy. There are things outside of work that are busy. And I would feel badly if my friends were resentful that my time just couldn't go to them at that moment. And I have to remember that, like, for especially a newly married couple, you're establishing an entire life together, right? Like, we're cool. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like, see you in 3 months, whatever it is, but like not being offended when someone else's priorities shift, because our relationship isn't different. The timing just is wacky for a while.
Yeah.
And I mean, I even remember talking to several friends, like, I mean, there was just like, in some cases, years where it was taking a group of people to get together. And it's like, it is what it is. We've got eternity. So it's not like we're shortchanged on this. So as long as we are still connected, like, it's a phone call instead of a dinner, right? It's a text to say, hey, is there anything that you need me to pray about? Or like, I'm thankful for you. You're a good brother. You're a good sister. Like, that sometimes has to be enough. And I also think it goes back to, don't have two friends. Have enough people that when someone else's like circumstances are slammed, you're not sitting at home wondering why I don't have any friends and becoming resentful of somebody else's life space.
Yeah, that's so good. I don't say this to flatter you, Sarah, but I have seen you do that so well.
Oh, thank you.
I think of Mike and Rachel right now, and Jesse. And Mike has always thought the world of you. But even in their marriage and now that they have children, he still, when I say when I said that you were on the podcast, he came alive.
Aww.
But because you've contended, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think you have done that so well.
Thank you.
And I honor you for that. And I'm sure that there are others out there who do it well. But I'm sad to say I feel like it's more rare than common.
Yeah.
And so I think that needs to be the
there's
norm.
so many things that I hear you say, and I know this about you, but I love hearing, I honor so much that you just don't choose to take on offense.
Yeah.
I think so oftentimes the filter becomes out of whatever the season of singleness is. And that can be across every person.
Sure.
It doesn't, married, single, doesn't matter. But you can choose to take on offense so easily.
Yeah.
And I love that I hear in so much of the thread of our conversation is you're like, listen, that is not going to do you good. It's not going to do me good. It's not going to be my relationship with the Lord good. So why would I take on that offense? Like, it sounds like you're always erring on the side of like, that's not really probably what you meant, or this is not really what you should do. And so I love that you have, it seems like you have chosen not to take on the spirit of offense.
Yeah.
And I love
there
that.
is such a maturity.
Yeah.
There is such a maturity. And I'm not even, it's such a weird, because when somebody's going through a tough time, the last thing you need to say to them is stop being selfish. Stop thinking the world revolves around you.
Right.
But in reality, that's the truth.
Yeah.
That's usually the truth. I know when I'm at my worst in my marriage, it's when I'm self-absorbed.
Sure.
And when I'm my worst at work, it's usually when I'm only thinking about myself. And
Yeah.
I think although we go through that, I wouldn't want anybody to say that to me in that moment.
Right.
But in the grand scheme of things, that's
Yeah.
really what it is. And it's this idea that, man, I have got to learn to push past myself, my wants, my longings, my desires, and I've got to choose contentment in Jesus. But I've also got to love my life, and
Yeah.
I've got to love my family, and I've got to love my friends. And if this is, and dude, if this is all that Jesus ever gave me, I have so much more than a lot of people in this world. And I think that is so missed sometimes.
Well, and it also goes back to the outserving one another. It is in marriage. We've talked about that over the last few weeks. But I love that even when you're talking about DC, you're like, at the end of the day, it's about serving people.
That's good.
And so I know your life today is right now, the Lord has just given you a grace. You're serving your parents.
Yeah.
You're serving our church. You're serving the people around you. And I think if we just come back to that constantly, it is truly about outserving one another in love. And that is across all relationships.
That's so good. Yeah.
I don't think anybody does it perfectly or right. I certainly don't. There
Sure.
are days when I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, I mean, there's those moments. But I also think, again, if you allow time to be your friend in this, all you see is the faithfulness of the Lord
That's good.
in every circumstance. And so if he's been faithful in 75% of the things, it's my perspective only if I think he's not being faithful in something else. Like he is faithful.
It is who he is.
And I don't
It's
know
not
if he's
what he does, it's
protecting
who
me
he
from
is.
something
Yeah.
or preserving me for something.
But you're trusting it.
Until I'm 90 or until I'm dead, right? Like you don't know the whole story. And I think the other part of that, and you know it more as you age, time goes by really fast. But you always have enough time to do exactly what the Lord has called you to do.
That's
You
right.
have plenty of time to do that. Now, we can make a mess of things, but he still will extend us to do, if we are actively seeking. It is amazing what the Lord can redirect.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I'm just waiting. I think the Lord has things to do in me, right? And so maybe I'm a very slow learner in this. That's a possibility. But like, again, just knowing if all of these circumstances are right for right now, then the rest also has to be right for right now.
Yeah. That's good.
But not getting hung up on it.
That's
I mean, what a spiral that would be on a daily
Yeah.
basis,
Yeah.
right? Like, how miserable would you be if the only thing that you thought was going to bring you life satisfaction is something that's not totally in your control?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's interesting? I want to jump back really quickly. You talked about making sure that you don't just have two friends.
Yeah.
I think about Jesus,
Yeah.
who was the ideal, successfully single person, and he didn't just have two friends.
Yeah.
Okay, he had a bunch, generally speaking,
Yeah.
and then he had the 12, which we all know about, But even within the 12, he had 3 that he was closer to.
Yeah.
And then he had 1 that he was closest to. And so we have these circles of friendships.
Yeah.
But the idea is if, Peter would have dipped, well, Jesus has still got 11 more
Right.
really close friends that he lives life with.
Yeah.
And so I think there's so much wisdom there, in surrounding yourself, not with just, because the older that you do get, you're right, your friendship circles do shrink. And so I do think it's a hyper intentionality. Okay, which leads me to my last question, so we can wrap this up. If Sara was going to, you were sitting across the table from a couple single guys and single girls, if there were 3, 4, 5 hyper practical things that you could say to them, and you would just bullet list them off as they are in the waiting season, they desire to get married, they don't feel called to singleness, they believe that they're going to get married, what are the few practical things that you would say, hey, do this now? And I realize some of this may be what we've already said, but that's okay.
Yeah. Hang out with the opposite gender.
Good.
Spend your time wisely. So it's fine to hang out with your friends, but invite other people to the group. Ask your friends to invite other people to the group. Like, practically find ways to expand your circle. I also think reconsider or consider what you're actually looking for. And this is just stuff we already know, but I even think like 25-year-old me, what I would want in a husband is not what 40-something-year-old me wants in a husband, right? And it's character. And it doesn't mean, like, I think at 25, I would say I want someone who loves Jesus, but my understanding of loving Jesus
Very
20
different.
years later is very different.
Yeah.
And the things you shouldn't settle for are different than things that I probably would have settled for a long time ago. So I also think, like, this might be not a word, yokage, right? Like, when we talk about being equally yoked, it is so easy to see like the spiritual dynamic in that. And that is certainly true. And it is a really good principle, not a command, but it's just such a good principle. But it's not just, in my mind, spiritually. And it doesn't mean you have to make the same salary, but do you have the same amount of drive and ambition? Do you want similar things in life? Do you love travel? Do you hate travel? Do you love surprises? Do you hate surprises?
Yeah.
There are some things that are really important to me that I want to be equally yoked to. Yeah. And that's more important to me now than some of the things that would have been different years ago, because I think the longevity of that relationship would be different.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting on that. PD often says in the beginning, opposites can attract, but the longer you're together, opposites can attack because you get frustrated with somebody who's so, opposite than you are.
Okay. So as we're wrapping up, is there any last thoughts that you would like to share?
Sure. I think how you posture in singleness matters, and we all get it wrong on different days. There's no other than Jesus. There's no perfect way to do it. I think for me, it's waiting with hopefulness and not like fantasy level, here's all the things that I want, but I hope that is something that happens for me at some point. And until it does, I'm going to take full advantage of the opportunities that I have now. And I want to live a life that's satisfying to me, whether or not I get married. I hope for something different.
Yeah.
And the situation is not that right now.
Yeah. That's good. But that's also, not to over spiritualize this, that is the Christian life.
Yeah.
The blessed hope is the return of our Lord.
Yeah.
We live our lives today longing, hoping that he's coming for us. But while we're hoping, we're living and we're striving and we're leaning in to be all he's created us to be while we simultaneously hope. It's a mega picture of, what we're talking about today, I think.
And hope isn't ease, right? Because I'm hopeful doesn't mean things are easy. It doesn't mean they're ideal for what I would define as what I want for my life today.
Yeah.
But I am hopeful that the Lord redeems circumstances. I'm hopeful that he brings the right husband in the right season. Yeah. I'm old enough to know that I don't know what that season is, right? And until the Lord does that, I want to be a good contributor. I want to have a good life.
You want to steward the time that God has given you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. That's so good. Sarah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Such wisdom
Thank you.
and gold. I think this is going to be fruitful and helpful for so many people,
I hope so.
People who are single and people who are married. I mean, truly, this is, my faith is encouraged, just
good.
hearing you. So I'm very, very grateful. So let's close in prayer, and we will wrap this up. Father, we are so grateful today for the incredible example of Jesus, not just in his singleness, but in every aspect of life that we can strive for, but in his singleness. We're grateful, Lord, that you did things so well, and you've given us that example. And today, God, I just want to pray for all of my brothers and sisters out there who are walking in a single season. And Father, I just want to pray that you will cause your purposes to be fulfilled in this season of their life, whatever that looks like, and wherever you're leading them. I pray, God, that they would find contentment in where they are. I pray today, Lord, that you would truly send every person who believes they are called to marriage. I pray that you will prepare and send them their spouse. But Father, we pray that you'll do it in due season. Thank you for Sara today. I pray your blessing over her. Thank you for all that you've done in her life and are going to do. And we're so grateful to you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen and amen. Thank you guys so much for being here again. We will see you next week on Stronger Marriage.